Hey everyone, it's Matt Williams, Mr. MPW. Welcome to today's video. Bit of a change of tack today. First video about General Aviation and getting back into flying. And for those of you who are aware, and for those of you who aren't, I suppose, I was a helicopter instructor in the Air Force, frontline combat ready pilot, been away on operations, all sorts of things. Had an accident in Puma, lost my medical because I damaged my neck, damaged some vertebra in my neck, and then was medically discharged from the Air Force. And that meant that I effectively lost my career, and that's why I moved into public speaking. That's why I moved into the training side and the drone world, and now we're going into the general aviation world as well. And what is quite cool, I've managed to get to a place where I can go for my medical again. So I'm going to be getting my Class 2 medical, hopefully a Class 1 medical soon. I'm going to be doing my ATPL ground school and taking you guys on that journey. Now, as part of that journey, what's been really interesting has been trying to re-engage with the general aviation community. You know, I got my PPL, crikey, I went solo when I was 15 in a glider, 16 with the Air Cadets, and 16 got my gliding scholarship and all that sort of stuff. 17 got my PPL, which I've funded myself, joined the Air Force, became an instructor, and the rest, as they say, is history. And now I'm trying to get back into it. There's been some quite interesting things that have kind of come to fruition, that have become obvious since trying to get back into it. And I think it's important that we talk about those things. I was at a meeting down in Henley-on-Thames just before Christmas with a bunch of aviation leaders, and we were talking about general aviation and why people aren't getting into general aviation. And do you know what? Looking at it from the outside, coming back into it, I think I may have found some of those main reasons. So let's dive in and take a look.
Experience what is the £200 burger in the UK, because what people tend to do is they'll jump in an aeroplane from their club, they'll fly to somewhere amazing like Slade Pier for a burger and then fly back again. And it's alright, yeah, the burgers cost you 10 quid, 12 quid, whatever it may be, but it's cost you 200 quid to get there and get back again, taking a whole day. Like, it's not exactly fast food, is it? Just go to McDonald's.
So, one of the first things then, like I say, trying to get back into the general aviation thing, trying to get my fixed wing licenses back up and running, get the PPL initially, and then onto the helicopter side of things after that, has been very much that kind of one of the big killers, I think, is the distance. The distance you've now got to travel to get to an aviation location, somewhere where there is a school, where there are decent facilities. And this isn't being helped by the fact that we are, as an industry, having to, and people are seeing that actually the value in selling off the land to develop on, being almost forced in some cases to sell that land off because the value of that land can't be realised unless you sell it and allow people to develop on it, is really disappointing. And that means that, you know, gone are the days where most of us live within 15 or 20 minutes of an airfield. For myself, in the middle of the UK, in the Midlands, you know, it's actually over an hour for me to get to my nearest flying school. And that's just crazy, you know. When I think back in the day when I got into flying, my parents, as I had to beg my dad and pay him petrol money and things like that to take me to the nearest flying location, and at the time it was kind of 30 or 40 minutes away, and that was a long way. And now it's like it's even further away to get to somewhere. And you know, are many parents gonna take their kids on that journey? You know, those who are very heavily invested in their children, sure, I guess they will. But all I'm saying is that by selling off the land and the facilities and all that sort of stuff, because the intrinsic value isn't there anymore, it makes it really difficult. And I think that is one of the things that's going to stop young people in particular entering into general aviation, because they've got to rely on people to get them there, and you know, we don't have the public transport necessarily that can get them there, so they've got to rely on parents and other people, and that just isn't going to happen. On top of that, when we then get to those facilities, the investment hasn't been there in a lot of cases, and as I've found, you know, it is bone jarring, particularly with someone who's got a bad neck. It's bone jarring, that kind of final half mile on the airfield or onto the airfield. And not only does it take you an hour to drive to your nearest airfield, when you then get, oh Christ, when you then get there, you're on roads like this for 10 minutes as you're driving onto the airfield. It's absolute insanity. The investment isn't there in the infrastructure, and you know, for lots of different reasons, but you know, ultimately these places generally are being run as a business, in some cases, helped by a voluntary force of people, and that means that, it's not always ideal. Secondly, I think then when you get to the facility, in a lot of cases, the facilities are quite old. We're looking at porter cabins, we're looking at old World War One, World War Two facilities that have been converted into training facilities now. And whilst that's all well and good for the general demographic that we find in those places, it isn't always welcoming. It's not always inviting for new people that we're trying to get into the industry, that we're trying to get into general aviation. You've got to be really passionate about it, I would suggest, to spend time in and around those places. And, particularly when you think about the weather in the UK, it's generally quite bad. There's a lot of time we can't go flying, but it'd be quite nice to be down at the airfield. And, are those places generally places where you would want to go and spend your time? I would suggest not. This isn't to single anywhere out. A couple of years ago, I did a bit of training down at Wickham Air Park at Booker. Great facility potentially, but actually at the same time going there, it was very tired, very dated. I went in as an experienced aviator. I went into the flying school there and just, I was looked at by the people on the desk. This happened at a couple of places, like I say, not singling out Booker, looked at by the people on the desk as if I shouldn't really be there, and I was a bit of an imposter. We need to work, I think, as a community of aviators to make it more welcoming, to make it more inviting for people when they come. Some clubs are brilliant at this, others aren't. Went to Slape last week, and parts of the video are from there. Shropshire Aero Club, again, quite old facilities, but a brilliantly welcoming and warm and inviting group of people. And that, I think, is what we need to encourage more of to get younger people into aviation. Once they actually arrive at the training location, once they arrive at the airfield, we need to make it a place that they want to be a part of, and they want to go and spend their time, and their spare time in particular. And it's quite interesting. I took the team that do our social media and that help support the channel with me to the club over at Shropshire Aero Club a few days ago, and I think they'd got this impression of what it was going to be like, and it was very much different than that. But actually, when we then went and spoke to people, when we went to the cafe, when we went round and looked at the aircraft, they were so excited about it that one of them actually came away, having never looked at general aviation before, and said, I'm tempted to sell my shares, and I'm tempted to sell my car and see if I can get shares in an aircraft. And that's awesome. That's what we need to be doing. We need to be introducing people and getting them excited. Then once they are introduced, one of the big things, I think, is confusion. It's red tape. It's the bureaucracy that surrounds, I think, the division within the general aviation community. Do I get an LAPL? Do I get a PPL? What qualifications do I need to fly certain aircraft? We need to work out a way to make that more streamlined. Even myself, again, as an experienced aviator, I understand the regulations. I understand the implications of EASA and the potential withdrawal agreement, or not, from EASA that the UK are going to go through over the next kind of few months by the looks of things. I understand all that, but as an expired PPL holder and a ex-qualified service pilot and instructor, what do I need to do to revalidate my PPL? And it's like, well, you've got a JAR PPL, that's not accepted anymore, so you've got to upgrade that to, or convert that over to an EASA PPL, but you were a service pilot as well, so it's a different system. We need to make that as simple as we can, because if we make it confusing, people are just going to walk away from it. And at the moment, I honestly don't quite know where I'm at. And really, I think, and this is potentially a takeaway for the clubs, for the facilities, look at kind of what you've got and think, right, okay, let's make a flow chart that people behind the desk can just go, right, okay, what have you got? Boom, bang, 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 this is what you need to do. And I think that would make it really simple, really straightforward, and people would therefore be able to get in. Point number 4, and this is a big one for me. I raised this at the meeting in Henley-on-Thames just before Christmas. When you rent a car from a car rental company, generally you'd expect that, you pay whatever it is, 50, 60 quid for a car, and you get a reasonably nice, reasonably new, safe car. And I think this is one of the things, there's something amazing for me as a fairly old school aviator about going and flying a Cessna 150 that was built in 1962. There's something amazing going and flying a Warrior or a Robinson, that is old. But a lot of people coming in, the new generation of people coming through, they want to fly modern aircraft. And I understand it's a huge investment, and it is chicken and egg. I get that. Like, where do you go? Do you invest in the aircraft and spend millions on aircraft to potentially get people through the door, or you try and get people through the door and limp along with the aircraft we've got? It is going to require, I think, a significant investment in new infrastructure, in new aeroplanes, to get the younger generation interested and fully engaged in aviation. And like I say, I don't know where that investment's going to come from. I'm not purporting to be able to do that, or that this is a magic bullet, but it seems to be that a lot of people are looking at this, and again, interest in bringing the team in to look at the aircraft. A lot of them are like, looking at each other, thinking, would I pay 200 quid an hour to go and fly in that? Yes, that's all we can do. But then when you look at some of the other places overseas, where again, arguably, and I understand it, the costs are a lot lower, the running costs are a lot lower, the weather is a lot better, so they can potentially afford to invest in those aircraft. Are we looking at this in the wrong way? And ultimately, if we're running the flying schools as a business, if we're running those flying clubs as a business, effectively employing people and putting people through, do we need to start looking at, right, let's invest at the grassroots level to improve the infrastructure, to improve the aircraft, to improve the assets that we have available to people. So it's like turning up and renting a modern car from a car rental company. We got a nice aircraft that's efficient, that's economical, that's safe to operate. But like I say, I fully appreciate that isn't something we can change overnight, but something that we certainly need to be thinking about as an industry. And something that would put me off, I think, if I wasn't in the place I am, where I love flying old school aeroplanes. If we want to encourage Generation Z into the industry, which is what this is all about, we need to get them into glass cockpitted aircraft. We need to get them into modern, clean, performance efficient aircraft. And I think that's something we're going to have to look at anyway down the line. So let's start looking at it now. And I think this is one of the ways that we can encourage more people to invest in general aviation and potentially then take it on into a career. The kind of fifth thing I want to talk about is the training. And the training at the moment is very old school. It's very Generation W, Generation X, whereas, we're into Generation Z now, guys. And, the young generation coming through don't learn from books generally, as sad as that is. They don't learn from a book. They don't want to learn from someone generally on a whiteboard or a blackboard in some cases, as I've seen. Why are we not investing in video learning? Why are we not investing in virtual reality so that people can experience, stalling 100 times and pay, maybe they could pay a subscription for that. They could experience that in virtual reality 50 times, 100 times before they jump in the aeroplane and spend their 150 to 200 pounds an hour to go through it the first time. We need to look at this and get away from this old school idea of training, invest in that training and move forward. And that is something that we are looking to do. I make no bones about it. We have proven ourselves in the drone training world. We are bringing that technology to general aviation initially and then into commercial aviation eventually. I'm doing my online ground school at the moment, my ATPL ground school, and it is death by PowerPoint. And it's so disappointing that is the way it is at the moment. It needs to be modernized. Kids nowadays want to sit on their phone, and I'm not saying this is the right way, but us looking at this Generation W, Generation X, Generation Y, need to realise that the people coming into this aviation industry in the future, if we want to secure the future for ourselves, is to make sure that we cater for them, and they don't read books necessarily now. They don't learn like that. They want to sit on the bus on the way to school watching 45 minutes of videos, and that now is how people learn. We need to embrace this and work with it. I'm not surprised, if I'm honest, coming back into this, to see that a lot of people go overseas now to do their training, and that's really disappointing. I mean, yes, we're fighting the weather in the UK. I would argue personally that makes for a better pilot, a better operator, a better aviator, because you have to think about it. You can't just go and fly the aeroplane. You've got to think about aviating in a wider scope, and that is what you're going to be up against if and when you move back to the UK or you're flying commercially, or even in the military. You have to be thinking about that. But I can see what the draw is to go and do your licenses somewhere where the weather's warm, where you don't have to pay extortionate landing fees, where you don't have to pay, fees for making missed approaches and instrument approaches and things like that. And don't get me started on the instrument approaches. That'll be another one for another video. We're lagging so far behind in the UK in that respect, particularly for the general aviation industry. So yeah, lots of things I think we can do. It's chicken and egg. I understand that. I don't propose to have the magic bullet and the solution, and I get that it's all well and good. It's just my thoughts and my experience of trying to come back into general aviation, and a bit of a negative one, I suppose, potentially, depending on how you look at it, for me to start off the general aviation side of things. But we are, as a company, looking to make a difference. You'll be able to catch up with me all around the general aviation community within the UK initially, but in the wider scope. So please make sure that you follow along to the channel. Give it a like if you did like the video. Give us a subscribe if you haven't already, and go and catch us on all the social channels as well. Please join that interaction. It's the only way we can make content that works for you. We've got loads more coming over the next kind of weeks and months on this, and we've got some quite interesting characters within the aviation community as well that we're hooking up with, where we're going to interview them and get their story so far. And that is what aviation's all about. It's all about learning from each other. It's all about building a community and all growing together. Don't forget as well, if you're in for this, you can catch us on Twitch. Go to twitch.tv/Mr. MISTR MPW, and I'll be flying most evenings, normally about 8:50 in the evening, 20:50 in UK time. I'll take off, we go flying around an X-plane, and we talk about things and we put the world to rights. So it'd be great to join, to see you there and for you to join in the conversation. But yeah, I hope it's been interesting. Much more to come on this. Let us know your thoughts, comments down below. Like I say, give us a like if you did, subscribe if you haven't. I'll see you in the next one. Fly safe. Blue skies.